to Cooking Common Sense. My sister brought me a flat of tomatoes, so I thought this was a great time to show everybody how to can. I think I'm going to start out with the basics, and then I'll explain to you what we're doing, and then we'll show you how to get down to the canning. Luckily, I had a grandma who canned everything. She was really resourceful, and she got me totally hooked on mason jars. And I was lucky enough to inherit her stuff, which is awesome. Nobody else in the family wanted it. I have a big aluminum ladle, which is really important for canning because you don't want to have to be going back and forth a lot. I have a funnel. You can find those at any good kitchen store. And then I got these huge pots, which I don't use but maybe a couple times a year when I have a whole bunch of stuff to can. Right now I'm using smaller pots. So, like I said, we're canning tomatoes, and I'm glad that it's the first one we're doing because tomatoes are kind of the pickiest thing to can. You have to be really careful. You can get sick if you eat tomatoes that haven't been canned properly. So, there's a few steps to what we're going to do. We're going to peel the tomatoes and check them all and make sure that they're good. Throw them in some hot water, get the peels off them. We're going to put them all back into a pot, get them nice and hot, and then we're going to put them into our sterilized jars. So the first thing you want to do is get all your jars together. Depending on how many tomatoes you have, you can kind of guesstimate from most pots how many quarts they'll be marked. If not, just get a bunch and use what you need. I do small ones as well as big ones because I use them for different things, and sometimes I want a lot and sometimes I don't. So we're using we're using all brand new lids and some new rings. I save the rings. You can use those as long as there's no rust or oxidation. They're fine. The lids, when I'm doing tomatoes especially, I use brand new ones. They shouldn't have, any marks from being opened. And there's a nice rubber ring that you want to seal well. So I'm going to put these in the oven in a minute. What we've been doing is we've been peeling the tomatoes and putting them in boiling water for not very long, under a minute, just to get the peels off them. And you do that by taking your tomato. Now this one has kind of a bad spot, so I'm just going to cut it off, and I'm going to pop it in the water. And if it doesn't, if you're not cutting anything off, you just score it. You can score it anywhere. They're not picky. This tomato is a little green, so I'm not going to use that. You don't want to can anything but really nice ripe tomatoes because, like I said, you can get sick. And I don't know what the chemistry is, but it's what my grandma said, so we're going to go with it. So I'm just going to score all the rest. I have all kinds of tomatoes here. I have beefsteak, I have some heirlooms, I have some little cherry tomatoes, we had some Roma, and it doesn't matter. I'm just going to put them all in here up to the, the water line. Don't overload your pot or they're not all going to get hot. So put the lid back on it for, like I said, just about 30 seconds, and you'll see the skin start to peel right off. In the meantime, I'm going to put these jars in this oven. It's at 250, which is hot enough to sterilize them and get the water nice and bubbling, but it's not too hot. If your jars are too hot, when you put the stuff in them that you're canning, they can crack. So it's nice that everything has to kind of just be a simmering temperature, I find, is the best. So once these have gotten nice and hot, then you just take them, and like I said, this is just boiling water, nothing special, and you just put them in here with all the other tomatoes until you've got a nice big pot. And then I'm going to take them, and I'm just going to peel the peel right off them and make sure they don't have any stems. I'm going to cut out the core a little bit, and then we'll come back and we'll show you how to put them in the jars. So we got all the peels off the tomatoes and stems and cores, and we popped them all into this big pot. And I didn't take the seeds out. Some people do when they're cutting them up and putting them in the pot. They like to take the seeds out. I don't care about seeds. So I was waiting until it gets all frothy and boily, and that's where we're at. But I wanted to say something really quick about jars. My sister brought a bunch of jars, mason jars and other jars, and asked me if we could can with them. And so I wanted to talk about it because I always had questions about it too. And here's the rule I use. Some spaghetti sauces come in mason jar type jars, and I have used them. Every once in a while they crack. They're not the same quality as a mason jar. So that's the only hurdle to using them, but the lids fit on tight. You use new lids, you're fine. So if you don't have enough mason jars, you can always go back to those. These other things came in pickles or, you know, whatever, fruit. And if I can't fit a mason jar lid on top of it, I won't use it. And in this case, it's too big. You can't fit one. And in this case, it's too little. This one comes with its own top, and it has a little dimple on it. So if you have some leftover spaghetti sauce or something that you want to can, go ahead and throw it in there and, you know, put the lid on it and try it. It probably could seal, and then it'll last longer. But generally, I'm just a mason jar fan. My sister did have a good suggestion for these jars, though. When she's working out in the garden, she fills them up with her drink and takes it out. And then she's got a little lid so that nothing gets in it. She's clever. Okay. So everything's boiling, all of the mason jars are hot, and I'm going to take them all out. Now, in the video for chili, I said I never heat up my jars. That's not altogether true. When I'm canning for real, for serious, I totally heat up my jars. Some people use these things where you put them in the big pot and you plunge them in boiling water on. No, my grandma taught me just put them in a deep tray with about 1.5 inches of water, turn them upside down, and you'll see them start to suck the water up. That's how you know they're hot enough. I keep it at 250, like I said, because I don't want them to get too hot. So we're ready to go. You can just pick whatever jar you want to start with, and I use my pot holders like crazy, but I also have tough hands. And then I take my funnel that I showed you guys earlier, and I put it over, and my ladle that I also showed you earlier, and I just start filling them. And honestly, it's really messy. I wore black today because we got sputtered and spattered, and it does kind of tend to get everywhere. But it's so worth it because tomatoes are one of the canned foods of like the top 5 that you have to be really careful with. They have a lot of chemicals and stuff in the process, and so you know where they're coming from when you can it yourself. And they're really yummy because generally they're fresher, especially if they're right out of your garden. And I use them so much. Okay, so also like in the chili video, I said you have to keep that clean. That's the most important thing to a good seal. Also, I use a lot of tongs, but I'm not going to do that right now because, like I said, I have tough hands. But tongs are great for this. You just set your really hot, clean lid on, and just put your ring on. And I like to put them on something, but I don't have a towel, but it's fine. Just let it sit. I'm going to do all of these, and then in a few minutes when they start to, well, a few minutes, an hour maybe-ish, when they start to cool down, you'll start hearing them go, and that's how you know they're sealed. Now, these new lids have little dimples in them, little round dimples, so when they seal, it sucks the dimple in, and you know you're golden. It's all good, and you're safe to use it. Every time you use your tomatoes, I try to use them the year after I canned them. Anything else, it sits on the shelf. I don't care. Usually we'll use it. But just smell it. Make sure especially if it's over a year, you want to smell it. And tomatoes kind of smell funky anyway, but if they really, you'll know. You'll know if tomato, I haven't in a long time with anything I've canned especially. I'm here to tell you. Also, I have to tell you one quick thing. We added a tablespoon of sea salt to these, and I use it to prevent, just with the oxidation, all that tends to just keep bacteria out and stuff like that. I used about a tablespoon for this. I don't go really crazy on it, but I do use sea salt because other things have preservatives like soda and iodine, and it'll interfere with the taste. So that's all I got. I hope you guys liked it. We'll do applesauce next time, and go can.